Hi, everyone. Thank you so much again for joining us in this second episode. We are going to be having a really fun chat in this evening. And I have my guest ready behind behind the scenes right now. And just here for the mezcal. Thank you, Mick. We're also ready. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you all really enjoy it. Feel free to ask any question. We're gonna have at least 1 hour interview with a lot of questions. We're gonna talk about his life, his career, what he studied, his work, just a little bit on native instruments. We actually rather talking about tacos. And I don't think I have anything else to say. And I'm just going to introduce you to my guest, who is Fabian Esqueda, the DSP and machine learning developer of Native Instruments. Yay.
Hello. Are we both now live then?
Yes, we are both live.
Well,
Welcome, and thank you so much for accepting my invitation to this chat.
Thank you for having me. I'm actually quite excited. It should be fun. What are you drinking? Should we introduce our drinks first?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm drinking wine. I already had my beer.
So I have this, one of my favorite local beers, just a pretty basic Agustina Helles. I'm sorry, Mick, I run out of mezcal. And because of the pandemic, the shop where I usually get it has been closed for a while. But I heard I think it might be open. So I think I'm going to make a quick mezcal run tomorrow. But for now, I'll have a beer.
Yes. Cheers to that. All of you guys, cheers.
Oh, and thanks already to the people who are saying hi on the channel. Hello, Jonathan Baruch.
Yeah, hydrate. Well, we already have our first question. Which is your favorite Steely Dan album?
Oh, easy question. Asia. Second favorite is a debut, but Asia is by far favorite. Favorite track would be Peg, I think.
Wow, nice.
Very recommendable album.
So how are you doing? How is everything going for you with all this pandemic, all these times? You're working from home, right, I guess?
Yeah, well, most of Native Instruments has been working from home for nearly 2 months, actually more than 2 months. And personally, I think it's been going quite well. I found it easy to be productive. I guess cutting out the commute time helped. I normally commute half an hour each way, so that extra hour actually is doing wonders. And I think I can also speak for some of my teammates when I say that we're actually making the most out of this. I feel like collaboration didn't really change. We found ways to continue working together. Just we're in touch pretty much all 8 hours that we work every day. So things are working really well, and we're being really productive.
I guess there are a lot of memes and GIFs going around.
Yeah.
Well, let's go on with the first question, which is something that is just very basic, but where are you from?
I was born and raised in Mexico City. Mexico, yes.
Nice.
That's where I'm from. I haven't lived there for over 10 years, but that is still very much where I'm from.
How long have you living in Berlin, though?
Berlin, just under 2 years, but I moved to the UK when I was 19 to study my undergrad. Yeah. Yeah,
we both kind of moved at the same time here, right?
Yeah, we're the same age, actually, right?
We're also the same age.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And about your musical background, what kind of music did you used to listen when growing up?
Well, that's an interesting question because it's really not the music I listen to right now. I guess that's usually the case. But when I was growing up, my parents were really into just classical rock music, I would say, classic rock. So I have very vivid memories of listening to stuff like Rolling Stones, The Doors, Beatles a lot at home. So yeah, that's the kind of music I was exposed to at a very early age. My dad was huge into sound systems when he was younger. I believe he was a DJ even.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but there isn't much information about that. other than what he sometimes mentions.
There was no
Yeah,
Instagram.
we should ask him. Sorry.
There was no Instagram back then.
Yeah, I mean there must be pictures somewhere, but so my dad was always into sound systems, and we had a pretty good sound system at home. So I have very clear memories of him blasting Rolling Stones at me as a like maybe 2-3-year-old. but then I got into other stuff. I went through a huge like Limp Bizkit phase, like I guess.
Well, that's actually my next question. What kind of music did you used to listen when you were a teenager?
Right, as a teenager, I think Metallica and Limp Bizkit were like quite big for a few years.
That is so cool.
I still go back to them once in a while, you know, like, or Linkin Park. That was huge at school when I was 13. And I was already kind of playing guitar back then, so I mean, I went through the like short phase where I was into all these like virtuoso musicians, including Steve Vai, who I kind of promised to talk about today.
Yes, we gotta talk about Steve Vai, and Dream Theater.
Yeah, I mean, so when I was 14, I remember me and my best friend from school went to see Steve Vai live in Mexico City, and I remember because I kept the ticket from the show and I glued it to my calculator at school. So I had that souvenir for like most of high school as well, like having the ticket for that concert. I don't know, it was loud. I remember going to bed with a lot of like tinnitus. We were like maybe 4th, 5th row. I don't know what were we thinking back then, but I don't know, we really liked it. So I was listening to a lot of that when I was a teenager. And towards the end of my teen years, that's when I actually jumped and started listening to more electronic music and synthesizers.
That is super cool though. Like at least to me, it took me a long time after that. Like we both are the same age, and I was also like into Linkin Park, and I remember like Steve Vai, and then get into like Dream Theater, and how much I hated the singer. But then I found out they actually had a band without the singer.
Oh yeah, true. The Liquid Tension Experiment, right? Yes. Yeah, I was just listening to that with one of my colleagues, with Boris, the other day. Shout out to Boris, who also likes Liquid Tension Experiment.
Yeah. Oh, nice. I didn't know about it. Then we gotta like hang out and listen to that. Talking about Boris, though, he has a question for you, which is your favorite thing about living in Berlin versus the last favorite thing before the pandemic?
I always have this answer because it's the most honest one. I'm really into Berlin Spätis. And right now with the pandemic, those are pretty much, I mean, yeah, they're still open. That's where I got my beer. For those that don't live in Berlin, because I hear they're only like a Berlin thing. They're not really famous outside, like in the rest of Germany.
We had some in Barcelona, but they're not.
Right, the concept stays, right? Yeah. Yeah. But it's just a shop. Like some of them are 24 hours. They sell beer, lots of beer. But some of the more sophisticated ones in Berlin have like tables outside, and it's basically a bar. They have a bathroom, table, and beer's like 1-2 euros, so it's pretty good. I've always liked the idea of Spätis because for a while when we lived in Finland, which was before Berlin, well, there wasn't anything like that. So getting beer at night was sometimes a bit impossible. You have to go to a bar. So I quite like Spätis, and I guess I also like street food here. I mean, back when I was a kid and growing up in Mexico, street food was quite huge. And Berlin is actually doing okay in that department, I think.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. So, I mean, I do like that too, especially.
Like someone's commenting that Spätis are called Bütchen in other parts of Germany, in the West. Okay.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, good to know.
Well, so when did you get actually into synthesizers? Now that you're saying it was like, you said like about 15.
All right, that's a good question. When did that happen? I had a microKORG when I was young. I got curious about synth, and that's when the microKORG came out. It must have been 2006, maybe. I was 15 or 16, and I bought one, but it was really hard to use. I still find it very hard to use synth. It has this weird matrix where you have to do kind of like an analog menu diving. You have to turn through pages, and then the knobs get assigned to different functions depending on where you are on the master knobs. So I really only use the presets most of the time. And to be honest, I didn't use it that much. I wasn't hooked, so I left it. But then when I was studying my master's, I started getting more into like music technology and algorithms to make music and processing. And Stefan Bilbao, who was my supervisor back then, he recommended me to start looking at the Moog synthesizers and looking at the circuits and how they worked. And I think that's where I started developing a real interest in synths. Before that, it was just fooling around. I had a couple. I think at some point I had one of those small monotrons, and it was fun. It was a fun noise machine, but I think taking seriously synthesizers, that happened when I started studying the circuits in my master's.
In your master's?
Yeah, that was.
Okay, that's
later. Yeah,
that's really nice.
I mean, we had a mini Moog in university, and that was fun. I guess that was the first one I played more seriously, more than just. I mean, there's no presets, right? So that's the one I started to use to maybe make some interesting sounds. But it was, as before, it was just playing around, never recording or playing with a band.
You were in a band?
I did have a band, yeah, but I played guitar with them.
All right.
And then I had another band during my master's where we played cumbia, actually.
I love that.
But with that band, we used to rotate instruments. So I was mostly playing that micro Korg, but just some presets, but guitar when synth wasn't needed. Yeah.
That's really cool. What is your first memory, like, that you remember, that getting excited about programming? Because some people, like, I remember my brother, for example, like opening his toys and everything that I was like allowed to be open in the house just to see what was inside. So did you have that phase?
So, but first memory of opening what? I think
like getting into electronics or like programming, like something that it got you very curious about that.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I did build a few guitar pedals when I was in university, my first year. And I think I built a wah pedal once. And I just downloaded the schematic, one for the components. I breadboarded the whole thing. I plugged it in, and on the first go, it made a sound. And I turned the pot. I didn't have a foot switch, but I turned the pot. I turned the pot, and you could hear the wah. And that was a big reveal. Like, oh my god, this actually worked on the first try. But I wasn't that young then. I was.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any circuit I've built has worked on the first try ever since.
So you went for like actually, I think that's something that most of us went through, like going to like rock music and metal and everything related to guitars, and then passing to like pedals, and then ended up in synthesizers.
I would also think that's the way to go. That's the normal route. But since I moved to Berlin and I joined Native Instruments, I've met so many people who are interested in the same things that we are. And you don't hear that story anymore that often. You hear the story of the guy who was already buying secondhand synths when he was 13, 14. And then you think, oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that Junos would be so cheap back then. I didn't buy one. I didn't think of that. But you meet people that say they were doing that. So maybe the guitar and pedals is one way to get in. But I mean, you can also be lucky and be exposed at an early age.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's a bit very different. Like, I guess as that we also come from like a American backgrounds, it's more likely that they will
that plays into it.
Is it like living and growing up in there? It actually gives you that, like input about different instruments. Here, like, I mean, come on, we're in Berlin, and they basically grew up with synthesizers.
Well, even simpler than that. I mean, when I was in middle school, like, no one was talking about Aphex Twin or Warp Records.
Yeah.
No one knew those people existed. We were talking about rock music. But I'm sure, I mean, if I'd grown in London or maybe Berlin, maybe people would be talking about electronic acts.
Yeah. And what was your first contact with like music software, with like recording?
Music software, I guess it would have to be. Oh, actually, this came up today during work. It was Guitar Pro. That MIDI that you could type the tabs and then click play, and then it would play it to you through some MIDI synth. And then yeah, me and my friends used to use that to write songs. That was the first contact. First more serious contact was I would have to say maybe GarageBand. We started doing some basic demos with that. And then I was studying music also as a teenager back in Mexico, and they taught us a bit of like Reason. We used Reason for a bit. I was quite impressed by the rack because you could flip it and then the wires moved. Yeah, I remember that very well. And yeah, just basic recording equipment. Guitar Rig 3, I remember. That was one of the first guitar softwares I used. It was pretty
Do
cool.
you still play guitar now?
Sure. I still play guitar, yeah.
Nice. I don't.
I have 2 guitars right here. I was actually working on my pedal board a couple of weeks ago. Like, I'm actually trying to invest more time into playing guitar because I feel like I've left it for too long. And I was quite good, I think, at some point.
Okay, I won't comment on that.
I think you can come back.
I've never seen you play, so I won't comment on that. So, what or who inspired you to follow your career? Because, I mean, I guess your family, you were always exposed to music, but at some point you found someone or something that you decide like, okay, I'm going to go for this.
Okay, yeah, that's an easy answer. I've always had like a role model during my education cycles that has inspired me to do what I do right now. And you're right. I mean, I was exposed to music at an early age. My parents were always into buying records, and we would go to a lot of concerts. And to this day, I mean, when there's a chance and we're together, we go to live concerts. We do that a lot. But there was never that extra push to like pursue a career in music. That was actually not what they intended for me, to be honest. And there was a bit of shock the first time I mentioned it. So that's a different answer to a different question. I guess it was just when I decided to study, when I was in high school, and I decided to study something related to technology, but music at the same time. It was quite hard, but I had a friend who actually came up to me once and said he was going to try to move to New York to study something called music technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what that was. And he said, well, it's basically like you apply all this like mathematical principles and engineering, you apply them to musical applications. And I think the first example he gave was like, you can just record bands. You can be a recording engineer, but then have good knowledge of the equipment and how it works. And so I kind of listened to his advice and I researched the topic, and it interested me. It was actually quite exactly what I was looking for. He did move to New York, actually. He went to NYU, but then years later I found out he actually went back to Mexico and he studied economics. So yeah, that actually took a weird turn. And I, who was just kind of like on the sidelines, like, and I just overheard this from him and got some information. Actually, I went all the way. So it's a bit strange. I should probably get in touch with him sometime soon. But then when I was in university, in my undergrad, I went to university in the UK, University of York, and I studied electronic engineering with music systems. That's what the degree was called. And I had a professor there called Andy Hunt. He's actually quite famous amongst the music tech academic circles because he wrote a book on sonification. And he was just a very inspiring professor, I think. He used to give a class about history of music tech, and we would cover everything. I remember talking about Radiohead and Moog synthesizers and early electronic music, Morton Subotnick. He would talk about all these topics, and you could tell that he had been giving that lecture for 20 years maybe, and he was still very excited about it. So he was very inspiring, and I still remember him very fondly. He still works there, actually. It's great. And he kind of set me on the right track. I would ask for recommendations and topics or books to read, and he started pointing me towards software like Pure Data and MaxMSP.
Right.
So that's where I kind of picked it up. And then in my master's, I already mentioned before, I was working with Stefan Bilbao. And well, the work that I did with him, it was also very inspiring. Like, he's a very inspiring professor and just very good with everything that has to be with numerical simulations of just physical systems. So he taught me how to simulate circuits in software, which became kind of the focus of my master's. And then he recommended that I continued studying and do a PhD, which is what I did. And then during my PhD, of course, I also met very inspiring people who kind of pushed me to try new things. And I don't know, I guess that's as good as an answer as I can give on that. I just had very inspiring professors.
That is really cool, because one of the things that I find that is really important in our system, in our education, is having professors and teachers that actually are inspired by the things that they are teaching, and with that they can inspire others. And that's the same that happened to me, for example. So it's really nice to get to know like someone who actually was inspired all the time by his surroundings and his teachers. It's not like there are very different and difficult topics to talk about, and if you don't find someone who actually inspires you to keep learning, it can be very frustrating.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's why I said I was always, I think of myself as a very lucky person. I was always the right time, right place, where people were there to help me and inspire me.
So you studied all these, your masters and your career, everything in the UK?
My undergraduate, my bachelor's, and my master's, yes, I did in the UK. And for my PhD, I moved to Finland.
All right. And how long?
In Helsinki for 4 years.
Oh, okay. Do you speak Finnish?
I do not, no.
That's impossible.
Yeah, I did study it for a bit, but it just got too hard. It was distracting me from my studies, or so I thought.
Too many things to study. All right. Guys, just so if you want to ask any question, again, just feel free to ask whatever you feel like. Otherwise, I will continue. And the next one that I have for you is exactly related to education. Like nowadays, do you use all the stuff you learned in school in your career nowadays? Like not talking especially about what your PhD, for example.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say I do. You ever seen that meme that seems to circulate around? It says like, okay, another day I didn't have to use the quadratic formula.
Yes.
You've seen that meme, right? Yeah. Well, I look at that meme and I think, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm using high school math every single day. So yeah, I guess that's a very clear answer. I do.
Yeah, but it's cool though. Like it's really nice. Like you're a proper nerd, so it's it's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the math work when I enjoy working on paper.
But mostly, like I don't get to see personally. Like so many people who is like, oh yeah, I'm so much into, like this, and what you hear is completely the opposite. I actually didn't use any of the things that I learned in school, but they are there for a reason. Actually, there are something that if, for example, I could go back, I, for example, push myself a bit more hard, even to like study more into like maths and physics, for example, which is something that right now I'm really into it, and I'm like trying to improve myself on that. But again, going back to like teachers and how they can actually inspire you if they give you like a vision of how to apply that in the future, then you can understand that, oh yeah, I love music, but I can actually apply maths to this and become an engineer and actually make this super cool synthesizer or instrument, or just work with bands recording, for example. So there are.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, I think I have the same thought once a week at least. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. Just continue.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the same thought as you, maybe once a week, and I think if I could go back to high school or my undergrad with the knowledge I have right now, I would do much better, or I would try to take more advantage of this bit or that bit. But I mean, that's just how it is. You just have to move ahead with what you've got. Yeah. But I also agree with you. I think it would be great if you could have a bit more. I mean, I guess it's difficult to have a professor that can tell you what you can do with the stuff he's teaching you or she's teaching you in every possible field. I mean, that's impossible. But maybe if the students were to show some interest in some specific areas, well, professors or teachers could try to find the applications.
Yeah.
As well. It's tricky. I think, yeah, it's a hard one.
It is difficult today, I think, especially when you have like 30 people in the same class.
But at the same time, I can tell you that right now I'm really into audio circuits, and I like looking at schematics and analyzing circuits. But back when I was in my undergrad, I wasn't that good with it. I was probably at the bottom of the class for the one class on analog electronics. I really struggled with it, and it's years later I understood it's because the way that it was being taught to me was not compatible with the way that I later understood it. So I feel like there's a problem with the way circuits are taught at universities, because they try to protect you from all these what they call complicated things. Like when you look at diodes, for example, well, diodes have an exponential response. Like you have the current has an exponential curve with respect to the voltage across the diode, but it looks a bit scary when you look at the equation for a diode. You have an exponential, you have a ton of constants, some weird numbers. And so at university, they just tell you, oh, don't worry about that. Just imagine that there's nothing, no current flowing through it. But then at some point, current flows. So it's more like a switch. Like you don't have anything flowing and then flowing.
Yeah.
And that to me confused me a lot, because then when you're doing the analysis, you have to make all these assumptions that are maybe not obvious. But if you had just plugged in the complicated looking equation since the beginning, it would have worked out. I don't know. I found that much later in life that the way circuits were taught to me was just not the approach that I liked.
You did teach some classes too. Like, how do you try to approach that?
Well, that was much later in life, so I was already, I hope, a bit more capable in my skills. But I've never taught analog electronics. That's still a very scary topic for a lot of people. And yeah, I would also be scared of how to teach it. I mean, I can take this opportunity to do my, I have a classic promotion that I make. There is a guy that is teaching analog electronics in the US at a university called Georgia Tech, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And his name's Aaron Lanterman. And he has a series of lectures online where he teaches his students audio electronics. And I watched those when I was in university much later, after I almost failed those courses. And it was like a big aha moment. I was like, oh my God, this guy explains everything in such a simple and just not patronizing way. This is better. And I would recommend anyone who wants to like start studying audio electronics to go look for him. His name's Aaron Lanterman, and he runs a YouTube channel. I think right now he changed the name, so it must be Lanterntronics. We can probably post it later in the comment section or in the description for the video. Yeah. Yeah, he has a few lectures online, but you can find them if you go around the forums and all that. So I think if I were ever to teach an analog electronics course, I would do it following his syllabus. I would just copy him, like just rip him off entirely. Yeah, I think he just does it perfectly.
All right, I will definitely post that later on in the chat.
Well, there's a question here from Boris.
Yes, and there is another question which is completely non-related, but I think like somebody else also asked the same question.
Well, Boris is asking for advice.
What advice would you give to someone just getting started with audio programming and modeling circuits?
Well, for the circuits part, I would definitely recommend checking out Aaron Lanterman's lectures. And if you check them all the way through, towards the end, he starts talking about implementing circuits in software, which is a valuable step if you want to do circuit modulation, circuit modeling in software.
Okay, I'm trying.
For audio programming, I don't think I have a good. I haven't found a good reference for that, but I would just recommend learn C++ because that's the language that all these audio algorithms have to run in.
Yeah, I'm trying also. Like I also asked you that a few weeks ago.
I know. All right, we have another question coming in from Mike. Moss Kitchen or Kebab Mahal? That's an Edinburgh question. Kebab Mahal all the way.
There's another food-related question.
Okay, yeah, let's take that one.
Any food he misses from Mexico that he can't get now or just doesn't taste right in Berlin?
Yes, there's a couple. Grasshoppers. I haven't been able to find grasshoppers. I quite like those. Very tasty. They go great with mezcal. And there's also a couple of types of cheese, like Oaxaca cheese. There's a shop that sells it here in Berlin, but it just doesn't taste the same. And for some reason, the one they sell here goes off very quickly. So maybe it's too fresh. I don't know.
All right, I didn't know that.
And there are some brands of mezcal that I can't find here, and I really like.
Okay, let's go with the next question.
Yes.
Which was the first project you developed as a student?
As a student, the first project that I'm proud of, I'm going to tell you about. The rest are just garbage. I did a multi-effects processor for the iPhone.
Oh.
Yeah, so this was around 2010, I would say. And back then, maybe it still is, and I just haven't noticed, but iPhone apps were like all the rage. Like every student wanted to get into iPhone apps and app development. There were so many books, resources. So I decided to, I thought that was the future. So I got into that, and I programmed like a small multi-effects inspired by the Korg Chaos Pad.
Mm-hmm.
So it had like a touch interface, like you can control the effects with your finger, and it had a low pass filter with some resonance. It had a ring modulation. There was a delay unit as well, and so you control feedback and delay time with the XY axis. And what was the other? There was a fourth effect. I think there was reverb, and I just controlled like wet with it. I used the effects that came with the core audio library back then. But even just getting audio from my guitar, this was aimed at guitarists. Okay. I remember now. Okay, this is very embarrassing, but I remember I even Velcroed my iPhone, and I Velcroed it to my guitar, so I had the touchpad on the instrument, kind of like the guy from Muse has it. Yeah. I mean, back then we liked Muse, not anymore, but.
It's recorded here.
It's not us. It's them. They changed, and that was cool. But just getting the audio from my guitar to go in and come out with low latency, that was like a huge revelation. I remember I was probably working on this at the library at the university, and I think I screamed and started clapping and jumping around. Yeah, because this took forever, and that became my thesis. That was my bachelor thesis, like how to design a full effects processing unit on the iPhone. And then I took that a bit further, and I coded like a Minimoog inspired synth after. But ever since, I haven't done any app development.
That's really cool. And your first programming language that you started with?
That would be C.
All right.
I learned C in high school, actually. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, actually, shout out to I think I see a couple of friends from high school here. That's so cool. Hi, Fer. Thanks for watching. Yeah, Fernando and I learned C together.
That is so cool. There is another questions here, like, but we will get into that, like making sound machines make a question. What is your field of work at Native Instruments?
Yeah, I think we should start going in that direction, right? We've been going. Yeah. So, well, my official role at Native Instruments is as software developer. So I work in C++. I'm part of the synthesizers and effects team. So synthesizers like Massive X, Absinthe, FMA, those fall into our domain. So do effects, including some of the latest releases were the Modpack, Crushpack, Replica. So I'm part of the team that works on those products. But I specialize within the team. My specialty is, as we've been mentioning before, on digital signal processing, or DSP. So I work with a team that there's 3 of us right now. Well, 4, but 3 working specifically on audio processing algorithms. That's, you know them, my colleagues Boris and Julian. Hi to them. And we work on the algorithms, basically what makes the sound. You know, when sound comes from your instrument to your computer, it comes out processed. We work on the actual algorithm, not so much the wrapper around it, which is actually a lot of work. Actually, it's very scary for me to think of everything else that's going on outside that tiny algorithm that's doing the math.
And there is another question from Ricardo. How long before the whole machine learning, deep learning craze is gonna blow up? Asking for a friend.
Well, I don't know. Maybe this is a language thing, but what does he mean by blow up?
All the process.
like become big or like collapse and be over. I think he means like,
Yeah, it collapsed. Yeah, I think so.
no. Oh, is it? Well, I think it's quite soon. I think well with machine learning, of course now we've been working on machine learning now also at Native Instruments. There's actually one thing I can share with the people watching this. Last year, me and my colleague Julian, we published a paper on how to use machine learning to do circuit modeling. So basically what I've been talking before about taking analog circuits like, I don't know, like this, like a guitar pedal, and making a software version of this. Traditionally, the way you do this, or the way we used to do it, was to look for the schematics. Hopefully you can find them, first of all. If not, you have to open this and kind of retrace it back. And once you have the diagram, then you start doing all the math. So basically that means applying circuit analysis techniques like Kirchhoff's voltage laws, Kirchhoff current laws, and just working down the math, try to come up with a mathematical formulation that describes how this box affects your sound. So for a given input, you get the given output. And once you have those equations, you have to put them into the computer using another set of techniques that involve numerical discretization. So you have to take an analog system like this into a way that your computer can understand it and process audio as it arrives in the buffers. So that's a traditional approach. It's very labor intensive, very difficult. Circuit modeling is hard. No one's saying it isn't. I struggle with it to this day, even though it's one of my favorite things to do in life. It's a real challenge every time. So Julian and I, and another colleague of ours, Andrea, we worked on a paper, on a method that involves modeling the circuit based on measurements. So you perform a series of measurements of the input, the output, and some internal points, specifically those points that carry memory, like states, for those watching who actually want to know a bit more. So in the circuit, there are some storage saving elements like capacitors and inductors. So if you store the voltage across those, or you measure it, then you have more information when you feed all this data to a machine learning architecture, like a network, and you train it so that it can generate the output. So what you do is that instead of doing all this meticulous circuit analysis, you come up with a machine learning algorithm that learns how to do the processing for you. Right? So this is something that we published last year. It's available to watch. We published it at DAFX conference last year in Birmingham. And well, answering the question, which is about when will machine learning blow up, I think it's coming. I think it's slowly more and more companies are starting to pay attention to what's out there in machine learning. And I can predict that in the next couple of years, I think we're going to be seeing more applications of machine learning for music processing. I mean, there already are many.
That's really interesting. Where is did you have the link that we could share it, or just?
Should we share it right now? We can put it in the comments.
And yeah, he definitely meant collapse. So.
Good collapse, and
yes.
And yeah, there's a bit of a delay with the transmission.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to collapse. I think both fields are going to learn to coexist, because what I think is the case right now is that usually for music application, all machine learning is fairly new to us, I would say, to some extent. So what we need to do is to start looking at all this. There's so many tools in machine learning. We need to start looking at the literature, and then decide what's useful for us, and then how can it be adapted? Because in the end, many of the things that are used in machine learning look a lot like things used in DSP. So something that you would normally use as a filter in a software synthesizer, well, that has an equivalent in the machine learning community. Looks a lot like a convolutional network. So it's just a matter of finding all these connections and making machine learning models more intelligent. I don't know if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Like maybe using all the domain-specific knowledge we have of DSP, and then improving machine learning, or using machine learning to improve DSP. So in that sense, I don't think it's going to collapse. I don't think it's going to be over. I think it's just the next step. It's what's coming, but not in the form that machine learning currently exists. I think there has to be a better integration with DSP and, well, traditional DSP theory.
Is this on your profile on, like, the question is where we can find this link so I can post it.
Right. The question, I'm going to send it to you right now.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, because actually I found that like really interesting, and we both talked about this like last year, I guess, when we met like 2 years ago. Okay, here it is. I'm gonna post it right now so you guys can check it out.
There's a question related that says, is machine learning real time or is it a one-time model generation process? That's a good question, because a lot of the times I remember when I was a student and people would approach me with machine learning ideas to solve my problems back then, my PhD problems, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would always ask them, like, okay, will this run real time? And they would always say, oh, well, no, machine learning is not real time. But I don't think that's true. I think, as I said before, if you come with domain-specific knowledge from DSP into machine learning, you can work on the networks to make them manageable, and you can have real-time machine learning algorithms. For some applications, like processing, sure. Synthesis, yeah. If you want to classify if you want to digitize your music collection and classify it, well, that's not going to be real-time, right? That's going to take a while to process. Yeah. I mean, how would it even work real-time? Like, you feed a record and then it tells you what it is. I don't know, maybe in the future, but I think some applications will certainly be able to run in real time.
There is another question. So you think of it as a black box and let it learn to generate the output based on the input?
That's an excellent question. Great. Okay, we can go into more detail then, because I didn't know how specific to be. Yeah, so basically this method belongs to the black box category. But usually with black box, you do input and output, and you just let the system work everything. Here in the paper we wrote, what we propose is measuring some internal points. So you provide additional information related to the states of the system. So you use the input and the states to come up with a mapping that will predict for you the next states and the output. So in a way, yes, it's a black box, but we're feeding more than just the input to it. We're giving it more information.
That's really, really cool. So now that you mentioned your PhD, I would love to ask you what was it about? Because I know what it's about, but I would love you to explain and more like deepness, like how do you actually got to the process through it, and then I will also add the link here of your PhD.
Right. Okay. So the topic of my DSP was on aliasing suppression for nonlinear systems. And what does that mean? You may have heard about the debate between analog and digital, right, Fabian?
A little bit.
This is something that comes up a lot, right? So there are many avenues to analyze that question or that debate, but there's one thing that is kind of exclusive to digital systems that doesn't exist in analog circuits, for example, and that's aliasing. So aliasing is just, not to go into too much detail, is just some kind of noise that gets introduced when you perform operations digitally. So if you have a guitar distortion that works in software, that algorithm is going to generate a lot of frequencies, because distortion basically explodes your input signal. And sometimes some of those frequencies will be misrepresented. If they're too high, they're going to be reflected. So the problem is that you're going to have some kind of artifacts and noise, and that's called aliasing. And I mean, that kind of doesn't sound good, right? It's noise.
Yeah.
It can be used with creative purposes. Actually, I have an example here, I think. There is a synthesizer, this one, the Basel Castle.
Yep.
You probably know it. This one, it has a chip, it has a digital engine, but it's got such a low sampling rate that most of what it generates is aliasing. But aliasing is just so much frequencies that they use it for creative purposes here. And you have so much noise in this machine when you turn it on. And I would say half of it is alias.
Yes.
So something that you want to do, if you're trying to simulate a circuit in software, you want to keep aliasing down as much as possible, right? And the usual way that you do aliasing reduction is that you use a higher sample rate. But that usually, well, not usually, that means that your CPU load is going to be higher. So you're going to consume more resources. So it's usually not ideal. And there are techniques to reduce aliasing when working at audio rates. And that's basically what I did for my PhD. We studied a bunch of techniques to kind of do more extreme processing, more nonlinear, more aggressive, so to speak, processes on audio without introducing these digital noise. Because usually when you read a bunch of debates on KVR, for example, that great place that is KVR, and people start talking about, oh, this digital synth is crap, doesn't sound anything like the analog. So one thing they usually say is it aliases. That's something that comes up a lot. So my research was based on finding techniques to avoid this digital noise. And I think that's the best I can summarize it in without going into too much detail.
Mm-hmm. We have a few more questions here, going back to machine learning. So gray box modeling is the future. It's one of the questions.
Well, if you want to look at this as gray box modeling, then yeah, sure, I would say it is. I mean, we think this method is actually white box. White box means like full circuit analysis, because you are simulating the dynamics of the system. You're doing everything. But yeah, I mean, there's no way why you should just keep using just input output. So I would say yes, gray box is the future.
All right. Any tips for what you think will be practical for real time?
Well, I would just recommend that you just port your network manually to C++. Of course, a lot of the machine learning is done in Python. All the libraries are written in Python. Mm-hmm. So of course, when you test there or you try to use data to process, it's not going to be real time capable. I would recommend that you find a way to put that in C++.
And talking about Python, which is your favorite Python tools for audio processing?
Can I say NumPy? Like the basic one that has all the all the mathematical formulas. I don't know. I like PyTorch a lot. That's for machine learning, but I've gone quite fond of PyTorch. If you're using Keras or TensorFlow, I recommend you switch to PyTorch.
You also published a oh my god, I forgot the name. You also published about the VCM from Search, which is something that I just put the link like a few days ago on my social media, which I'm gonna also add the link here, which was just like your research.
Right, yeah, that's part of my research, yeah.
Yes, could you explain that a little bit more, and how do you went through that process too?
Actually, yeah, I have a cool story for that one to share. So yeah, as I said, the PhD topic was techniques to suppress aliasing. So then once we had a few techniques working, we started thinking, okay, we need to apply these techniques to something. So we started looking for nonlinear circuits, and nonlinear circuits means circuits that distort, right? Mm-hmm. If you have a linear system like a reverb or delay, that won't introduce any distortion, so no aliasing. But guitar distortion circuits are pretty good source of aliasing. But then we found out that distortion pedals were not distorting that much. We wanted to look for something more aggressive, and we found that wave folders actually do. Wave folders are a bit more extreme, and I don't know. I love them. I think they sound amazing. I'm sure you do too. I do. A wave folder, to those that don't know, is a circuit that basically takes a signal and it flips the top parts. So in a normal distortion, like a clipper, you have that every portions of the signal that are quite high get chopped off. But in a wave folder, they're flipped. They're flipped, yeah. Yeah, so it looks like you're folding the signal. And what that does to the spectrum is crazy. You introduce all sorts of harmonics, and then when you start modulating the amount of folding and putting more wave folders in series, then it becomes a mess. If you're trying to do this in software, it's an aliasing carnival. It's completely unusable unless you do something to work on that. So this was perfect. We had a circuit that was impossible to simulate in software without any treatment, and then we had these techniques. So the point was, okay, let's combine them. And we actually use the search VCM as one of the examples. VCM stands for voltage control multipliers, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
I can also tell you why it's called that.
Wave control multiplier, I think. Yeah.
But VCM, right? Voltage controlled multipliers, yeah.
Let me.
Doesn't really matter.
I have. Wait, I'm gonna share.
Multipliers.
I know, which you probably know more about me. There is a. I'm gonna share the page here. This is what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, that's the one.
Is wave multipliers, like.
Okay, so this circuit.
Yeah.
This circuit, I am not. I don't work research, so I don't know why I'm doing this product demo. But the top part, there's 3 sections. This module has 3 sections. The top one is just a clipper, so it's almost the same circuit as a Boss DS1 distortion pedal, the small orange one. It's very similar. The middle section is 3 or 4 wave folders in series, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom one is really hard to analyze. We actually tried, and we gave up and did another circuit instead. But the bottom one is like, if I remember correctly, it's like a rectifier in series. It's a bunch of rectifiers, but they're built using Norton amplifiers, which are really hard to analyze and simulate. But the middle section, yeah, that's the one we did. So it's wave folders.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called a voltage multiplier because if you feed a pure sine wave into it, what you get at the output is a sine wave, almost, at 3 times the frequency of the input. So it's like a frequency tripler kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have multiple in series, and once your input is more complicated than that, it's not really a tripler anymore. But that's why it's called the voltage control multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
The wave multiplier. Oh, this version is called differently. You're right.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's not that I know a lot about it, but yeah, it's actually like this. I mean, there is a lot of versions of this one also with like different names, but this is from random sources. That's how it's called, and I just found it here, which is actually one of my favorite modules.
It's great. I have a version here somewhere in the box. Yeah, it's not in my case right now, but I have a copy as well. What's really interesting about this, and it's great that we can tell this like live on camera. When we were working on the circuits, we contacted Ken Stone in Australia. Ken Stone, for many years, he was selling Surge, an authorized seller of Surge PCBs, right?
Yeah, very important to say unauthorized.
No, I said authorized because on his website it states that he's paying royalties and everything. Yeah. I think So we borrowed the schematics from there to do the analysis, and we got in touch with him asking some questions. This was about the bottom section when we couldn't do it, and Ken said, "Sorry, I mean, I really can't help you. I don't know. Why don't you ask Serge himself?" And so I was working with a student back then, Geoffrey, and he got in touch. He actually contacted Serge over Facebook, of all places. That was the contact we got. And Serge replied, yeah. So Geoffrey explained the problem we were having. Serge replied with some tips. But I think the bottom line was like, guys, don't bother. Like, it's too hard.
Do you even remember?
I really, maybe he definitely didn't remember. He mentioned that. He said, guys, this was 50 years ago. But yeah, I mean, in the end, we got something working, but we weren't happy, so we moved on to a different project.
Well, that's nice. You mentioned you were also like in the paper. You were also talking about the wave folder from Lockhart. Right,
the Lockhart wave folder. That's a different circuit, yeah. That's the wave folder. How did we find out about that one? Right, I think, I'm not sure, so I need to put a disclaimer there. I think it's the same circuit used in the Arturia metallizer.
Oh, all right.
You know, there's a knob on the triangle waveform called metallizer, right? So when it just sounds
on the mini brute.
Sorry?
On the mini brute?
I think on all the brutes, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
who, if I understand correctly, were designed by Yves Uson from Synth. I probably pronounced that all wrong, but so we heard about the Lockhart Wave folder through Yves' website. He had the schematics, he had it as a DIY project, but then it seems like it's the same one as on the Arturia one. And so we did the analysis, and same thing. It became an aliasing festival. We applied techniques, and it sounds quite good. There is a version of it for free, actually, that people can download if they have Max MSP. We can put the link later because I need to look for it. But there's a website that I made back when I was a student.
Okay.
And you can download a demo of the Lockhart Wave folder, and that one sounds pretty good.
I found a module with like 2 HP. Wait, I'm gonna share it. It's like super. It looks super cute though. It's this one here. It's from York Modular.
All right, so that must be the analog version. Because to be honest, the analog version is super cheap to make. It's 2 transistors and a resistor. It's on the cover of my thesis. That was the picture I used because I just really like the circuit. It's very simple, very elegant.
Well, that's like a good project to.
Yeah, it's so well known. And the history of that circuit is that it was designed by a guy called Henry Lockhart Jr. But it was published in a. Where was it published? It was published in a different context. It was used for telecommunications to triple frequencies. Yeah.
All
but
right.
Then Bernie Hutchins from Electronotes, who maybe you know of, he found it. He read about it and he published it on his. On the Electronotes actually. And also Ken Stone told me that he found it there on Bernie Hutchins' website because Ken Stone also sells a version of this. Well, he has a DIY copy of it.
Yeah.
It's very famous design because it's very aggressive. It's a very sharp wave folder, but it's also very cheap. If you look at the Buchla versions of wave folders, they're very expensive. They use tons of op-amps. So this one's great. Very cheap to make.
Talking about Buchla, there is another question here. Like I get like the typical question: search versus Buchla.
Oh, that's just someone teasing.
Really, really likes you.
It's hard to say. I would have to say Buchla, I think, because I'm talking about circuits. The Buchla circuits are a bit crazier because I think Buchla didn't hold back when it came to budget. So
no, he went really, really.
Yeah, he went all the way.
Like mass production and budget was not his thing.
Well, there's Search was a master of simplicity and cost saving.
Yeah.
So they both have their advantages, but if I had to pick one, I guess I would go with the expensive Buchla.
Fair enough. And it was something like also unique, I guess, from my opinion. Very, very unique.
It's quite funny that they get thrown in the same category because they're so different, right?
Yes, they are. Yeah. It was funny though, like I was talking to Malcolm Cecil and he was talking about how he and Serge, they both designed. Like the NTO was made for the Tonto, for the system that
Right, I've read about that.
Malcolm had, and then it became actually the NTO. So it's funny though because he was like, we were talking and he was like, I never got to have one of the NTOs, and I sent it to him and it was like super, super happy. And actually Serge had a very, very, very different approach than Buchla had, which I guess like for those times it was very creative and inspiring, like very different people like Moog and then also like Alan from the ARP and then Buchla. They were all living in the same time, but they both all of them have very different approach in terms of like design and circuitry.
Yeah, they couldn't be more different here, right?
Yeah.
Both amazing. All of them amazing, yeah.
Yes.
I never played an ARP. I really want to try the 2600 reissue that Korg did, but it's also expensive.
Well, not making any advertisement or anything, but you can play it at Touchpoint. Like the booking is open and is available now, and it's for
All
free.
right.
So
I just have to cross the city to go there.
yeah, it's just like walk for 2 hours and then you get to play it. So, guys, if you still have any questions, just feel free. I will continue with the questions I have here. Well, there's another question. What about the wave folder from the OCoast from Make Noise?
That's a great question. I really don't know. I have to investigate. Sorry?
Have you tried the OCoast? Like you played it?
I have, yeah. And the wave folder sounds great because that was really smart what Tony did with it, that you have the wave folder signal and the clean one, right? And if I remember right, you can blend between them. So you kind of like simulate a filter sweep because, the wave folded waveform will have tons of harmonics.
Mm-hmm.
Dry signal won't. So when you blend between them, you simulate this filter sweep. So that was very interesting. But I don't know what topology it uses. I'm going to have to ask, or because, yeah, there's no schematics for that. So I'm going to have to just ask and hope that they tell me.
Yes, they're cool. I guess they can share that information.
Oh, there's another question.
Yes. How do these analog modules lead to work in Max? I'm not a digital guy, but I'm intrigued by what goes on over in this world.
Right. So it all comes down to what I was saying before, that you have the analog circuit and you have to find a way to put that into software. So in the end, I guess the easiest way to think of it is that it's just the circuit is doing a mathematical function. So you have a kind of thing like a y equals f of x. So you need to find what f is. You need to find the function. And once you find it, it's just a matter of coding it, saying like, okay, output sample equals this function applied to the input sample. So you can easily process audio in that sense, just, well, easily. And if you have the equations and you can discretize them, you can just port them and have replicate the behavior.
This is a question that actually I made to you before, but I would like to make it publicly right now. We both feel like I'm analog, he's digital. For a person like me, for example, that has no idea about like programming, what would you recommend to get into programming? Which type of language? And yeah, which would be the first project, for example, the first thing that I could get into, like trying to emulate or learning?
Well, I think I'm just gonna tell everyone the same answer I gave you, because it's what I believe to be closest to truth. The best language you can learn, of course, is C++, C and C++. That's what products are written with. It's the fastest, well, with like realistic measures, because I mean, there's faster, but really hard to use. But then there's other languages like Python, which is actually very useful to learn, and it can take you very far, but it might not be as useful if you're trying to program a real-time synthesizer or effect. And then there's the graphical languages like Pure Data and Max MSP, which will actually get you to places really quick. Like if you learn Max MSP, if you go quick, you can have a full synthesizer working in a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
But really, that synthesizer will not work outside of Max MSP, and the skills that you learned working on Max MSP are not transferable to anything else. So it's a tricky decision. If you just want to get something working, something you want to play with yourself, then sure, you just learn Pure Data or Max MSP, and the return will be shorter. Like in a few weeks, you're going to have a lot of stuff working that you want. But if you want to invest in your future, I guess, and open the door to like more useful applications, I would say learn C++. And then you can use toolboxes or frameworks like Juice, for example, which abstract away a lot of the work to get a plugin working. Juice is pretty hard to use as well. The learning curve is quite steep. But once you figure out how the audio samples are delivered to you and how you process them and how you send them back, then you're on the other side.
You just become a master Jedi.
You become a master Jedi, yeah. And I mean, the first project that you can do, I mean, this is going to sound like a joke, but if you can just get audio in to your computer and back out, I mean, that's half the work.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, you can just control the volume.
yeah. Sounds very basic, but I guess it's not.
No. Getting audio in and out and getting a parameter to map from the knob to what the sound. That's all really hard.
All right.
And, yeah, I'm lucky that at Native Instruments we have a great team of people who are helping us make that easier every day.
There is another question from Nico. Hi, Nico, on Force. Which tools are you using to define the function?
Right. Yeah, that's tricky. It's a lot of work. So if you take a circuit, any schematic, and you want to do the analysis, you're going to have to look at tools like nodal analysis, Kirchhoff laws, mesh analysis. That's all to derive the equations. But then to take the equations from paper to software, then you have to use a lot of techniques that fall in the category of numerical methods. So just to name like I think I get the default one that I use, like my go-to numerical method, and everyone's is called trapezoidal rule or bilinear integration. That's getting more technical than I wanted to go, but if that's what the question is about, those are the tools we use. We use circuit theory laws, circuit analysis rules, and numerical methods like trapezoidal rule.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a lot of questions though. Like,
that's great.
Your stuff runs as plugin on PC, and are you doing coding for microcontrollers as well?
Right. The stuff that I personally work on, we're in the effects and synthesizers team, so we run as VST effects. Yeah. Well, VST, audio unit, AEX, but yes, there are plugins that work on both PC and Mac. Personally, I don't do work on microcontrollers. I did some during my studies, but I didn't enjoy it enough to pursue it any longer. I would like to do, because I mean, if I could start like making stuff for myself, like some hardware under the radar, yeah, that would be great. But that's not my area of expertise.
Morgan is also asking any memorable. Wait, here. It's just any.
Oh, I see it now.
Any memorable happy accidents while working on DSP?
I have to say no, not that I can think of. And this is the reason I know this answer so easily, is because I talk about happy accidents a lot when I talk about analog circuits. I'm playing with synth. I think that's where you get the happy accidents. I mean, there's two. Sorry.
That doesn't happen on programming mostly, then.
Rarely. I mean, there's happy moments when you code something and it runs on the first time, but that's just a lot of work being put into it. And that takes me to, I think, one of the things that is missing from software synthesizers, not that anyone asked me, but is that happy accidents, like just plugging two outs and getting something that sounds cool. A lot of the work that I think that we do and that should be done with plugins is to make sure that every knob position takes you somewhere nice, right? Like every single, like stay in the sweet spots.
Mm-hmm.
As a user, you can think, oh, I accidentally moved the knob, but it sounds great. And that could still be a happy accident. But during development, I would say not so much.
Like, if you had the opportunity to design your own synthesizer, would it be software or hardware?
That's a good question. No. I'm gonna be bold and say it would be analog, purely analog. But just because I have never done that. And
all right.
I would, but I mean designing it, like just building it. I mean, that would be hard. I haven't done that either.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess designing something in hardware, that's something I would like to try, just to see if I can do it.
That is also a question that I would like to ask you. Was Native your first work in the industry, and even after studying?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is my first industry job. Yeah, I had a couple of jobs before, but nothing that related to audio. I did have a brief job in Mexico City between my master's and my PhD as a web developer. And up until, a couple of years ago, I never thought of that as teaching me something extremely valuable. But that's where I learned Python.
All right.
Yeah, and since I joined Native, and I've actually been using Python a lot more, so that became valuable. Yeah, not that I'm a Python expert, but I didn't come in like from zero. I had a bit of background with that.
And which was your first project for Native, if you can say it?
Sure. The first project I was involved in was finishing Massive X.
All right.
Our flagship wavetable synthesizer. Have you played with it?
Yes, I did.
Right.
Yes, I did. I think it was kind of like Massive X. I did use it a lot before getting like full into hardware. So yeah, thank you for that, dude.
Well, I only worked on when I showed up, of course, Massive X was almost done. Yes.
Other projects like after that one that you have been involved in Native that you can say?
Sure. The last one that last project we released in December, maybe you heard of it as a Christmas gift. We gave a reverb. Yes. It's called Realm. It was out for free for a full month, and yeah, I was helping out with that a bit. I think it's a great plugin, but I think you should ask about it to the person that designed the algorithm, Dr. Parker.
May we know why you use Python? Most plugins are made with C++, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. The Python is all right, because Guillermo mentioned he just arrived, so he's late. Python is for everything that has to do with machine learning research and development. For normal, for actual deployment of products, yes, of course, C++. You're right.
And now going back to my question, like, why would you design? What would you integrate in your synthesizer that you think that is missing in the market, even like if it's not something commercial, for example?
Oh, I think I would design my own sequencer.
That's super cool.
I don't know what it would do, but I can just tell you that I'm not happy with almost any sequencer out there.
Oh,
maybe I'm too dumb. Maybe I just don't know how to use them. But I would make my own. Like, I think my favorite sequencer is the one on the SH-101.
Mm-hmm.
But I, of course, find it extremely limiting. So I would probably do something, but I would start from that point. I would build up a bit on that rather than trying to, come up with a big thing all at once. I also have a JX3P, and that has a sequencer, but you can multi-layer. You can use the oscillators to do multiple layers.
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's one feature I would include in my synth.
That is super cool. But actually, I do think like you. Like, it's not that I don't like the sequencers. I actually really like the sequencers, but they're mostly like loopers more than actually.
Yeah, that's true. It's
really
hard to interact with them.
Exactly, you cannot apply them for like a proper, not like a proper musician is not the right word to say that, but to apply it in a more musical way of playing music, like recording music and playing it live, for example. I think it's very limited, and it's one of the things that I do talk a lot about that here at home, like how mostly synthesizers are actually like focused just on like making loops.
Yeah, it's tricky. That's why I said it's the first thing I would work on, I think. Or not the first, but it would be the main thing I would concentrate on, because I don't have an answer. I mean, I've pictured myself playing live with my SH-101, and then I think, what if I want to play 2 songs? I need to bring 2 synths?
Exactly.
I mean, I already spent a fortune on one. How am I going to get a second one?
Exactly.
Right, yeah, that's a very good point. You're totally right. I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah, well, dude, we should just, quit our jobs and start doing this. I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
Hey, there's a couple more questions I want to answer before we move on.
Yes. One question here. I see you have some verbose modules in your rack. Do you like to use more digital modules in your rack, or do you like to explore pure analog?
At the moment, I'm actually my case is going a transformation in that I'm getting rid of most modules and only keeping variables. So I would say the answer is analog.
Because it's analog, or
no? I just really agree with Mark Verbus's design philosophy. I actually quite admire his work, and the way that he plays with those instruments is amazing. Like I've seen him live a few times using just his synths, and it's so much fun. It's great. I mean, that's the kind of music I would like to do or try to do. I mean, it's not that I don't like digital modules. I have a bunch. I actually have up here. I have a bunch of mutable instruments modules, and I had fun with them for a while. But I think right now I want to move on to something a bit more challenging. I find the Verbus system a great challenge to play with. Also, I mean, but that's a different question, I guess. But I mean, at work we do a lot of work on the computer, so when I come home, I don't want to look at screens. But of course, there's digital Eurorack modules that don't have screens, right? So that's not an excuse.
Yeah, I guess it's their difference.
For me, it's just a matter of I like how the instruments are designed more than I don't care if it's analog or digital. If the design speaks to me, if it fits my learning skills, because it's also about learning how to play synth. It's really challenging sometimes. Then that's for me. If it speaks to me, then that's what I stick to.
And which is the toughest project you have worked on today?
Well, I would have to say my PhD. That was a lot of work, probably a bit of burnout towards the end. So thanks a lot to the friends who were around during that time. Also, shout out to my friends in Finland who promised they would be watching us. So nice. Here's your shout out. Thanks for sticking around back then. It was tough. It's just really hard to work on a single project for 4 years. So of course, towards the end, I had some trouble wrapping up. But
yeah, I mean, I guess at least I have seen that like many times. Like people just want to finish that and never ever like talked about this because it is tough work. But I guess it pays off also. Like once you look back.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I'm doing what I'm doing thanks to that work. So it definitely paid off. There was a question before about how I ended up working at Native Instruments. And I think the story is quite short. Like there was, during my PhD, I approached them and started bouncing ideas with one of the researchers there specifically. And hi, Julia, that was for you. Shout out. So during my PhD, I approached them and we started bouncing ideas. We started collaborating. We wrote some papers together. So towards the end of my research, it happened that there was an opportunity to join, and I took it. Well, I interviewed. They accepted me, and the rest is right now. Yeah.
How long have you been working for them?
Actually, I checked the HR database this morning for some reason. It's 1 year and 9 months. No, 10 months. 1 year and 10 months, almost 2 years. Yeah.
All right. So you moved to Berlin specifically to work for Native.
You can say that, yeah. Okay.
Well, that's really cool, though.
I like Berlin. Though. It wasn't hard.
Talking about the market right now, in your experience as, I would say, like synth player,
sure.
and a developer, what would you say? Like we mentioned the sequencer, but would you say like you would like to work on in the future, or do you think that it's missing right now? In general,
that's tricky because I mean you see companies releasing their like 5th monosynth, right, and more polyphonic synths. I think I would probably just, if I had to, I mean, I answered the question before. If I had to design one, it would be analog. But I think I would just work more on the interface, just make the instruments more inviting. I think if maybe one thing is missing is that I think some instruments nowadays are a bit complicated to get into. The learning curve is quite steep. It might pay off because you see people performing on them and you realize, wow, okay, I can do that with that instrument. But it's really hard to get from A to B. Sometimes I find some instruments are quite cryptic. And there are some beautiful instruments out there, like the Juno 60, that just invite you to play them, and they're so immediate, and you can still make amazing music with them. So I don't think there's anything. I think there's so much option out there. I don't think anything specific is missing, but maybe more intuitive instruments are missing.
Yeah, I can agree with you though. Like it gets very, and mostly talking about modular, everyone has his own interface design.
Yeah.
And it gets really tricky to go from one brand to the other, although like some of them are even like the same circuit and the same, they do the same thing, but it just gets so like, like different, and that is actually it can be inspiring in one way, but it can be also like not inviting at the same time, which is one of the things that I kind of agree with you with the verbose interface. It is kind of like goes to the point.
It does what it says.
Yeah. So especially when it comes to modular, like you end up with like a huge rack.
Yeah, maybe I just don't have the patience I had when I learned to play guitar, because when I play guitar, I dedicated maybe 10 hours a day. Like I would just practice in front of TV. I would watch TV and just be practicing my technique. Maybe I just don't have the time these days or the patience to invest in systems that look complicated. Maybe they're not, but that look like it.
Any like digital and analog synthesizer, not talking about modular now, that you think like this is like, okay, this is really innovative, or that you're like surprised or like really want to get into it? Like also there is also another question.
Yeah.
Do you in the last years, for example, the last 2 years, that you're working for Native, like got any of these synthesizers and opened them and tried to get just for fun to check the circuitry inside?
I opened a WASP. Yeah. Yeah, I opened an ED. Is it EDP or the WASP synth? Yeah, I opened one. It was just for pleasure, though. I mean, that's not a work-related project. I just opened it up. I'm also building one with a friend, my friend Max Rest. We're building a DIY version of it, but we got interrupted again because of the pandemic. That's the one I opened. In terms of an instrument out there that has surprised me a lot. Well, I mean, right now I would have to go back to when I started getting into Eurorack, and that's when it happened. Like, I mean, the first time I saw a Make Noise system, I was mind blown, and I said to myself, like, oh, you have to get one of those. I still haven't. I might one day. Also, the Verbo system, when I saw Mark playing it for the first time at a club, I thought, wow, okay, that's a system I want.
How to play the synths.
Yeah, so was that kind of like the line of your question? What kind of instrument out there? I would actually swear by the Verbos modules. Those are the ones. I mean, he just released, well, maybe more than a year ago, but there was a delay unit.
Mm-hmm.
So much fun. It's so much fun to use, and that's what called me to it. I haven't bought one yet, but it's the next on the list. It's just such a fun instrument to use.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really interesting. I hope you finish that WASP. For how long have you been working on it?
Oh my God, more than a year. It's even embarrassing, yeah.
Well, guys, we are gonna stop in a few, let's say 15 minutes. You okay with that? 10?
There was a question there that we ignored, but I want to acknowledge real quick about tacos. Pastor, yeah, that's important. Pastor, yeah.
Now.
Pastor all the way.
I wanted to say, any question related to, music, industry, synthesizers, all welcome. And then we pass to the non-related music stuff, which tacos are completely the next question.
You know what? I just realized I forgot an instrument that I've been dying to try for a while, because I've played it at Super Booth once. And you have one, the Bastel, the Bastel system, right? The wooden one.
Yes.
Yeah, that one for example, it's an instrument. I don't know how to play it. I've never I kind of fooled around with one, but I didn't get much out of it. But I'm very attracted to it. There's something about it that I want to try. I think I want to get one, but I can't justify the expense. Can you say something about that instrument? I know you have some very strong and good opinions about it.
I do. I mean, let's start saying that I love the Bastel guys. They are actually one of the first Eurorack companies. Exactly. Like I have 3 of those at home. For example.
Do you have version 2?
What?
Do you have the second version, the reissue, the 1.5, or?
I think I do. I mean, I don't think that one is mine. It actually was the first project of my boyfriend, like soldering.
All right.
Yes.
It's a great instrument.
Yes.
I mean, after designing a synth with a better sequencer, I would design something like this. Something like this really calls my attention. Like
small and cute.
Yeah.
Well, I do. Yeah, I do have the Roomba rack. That's how it's called. I would say that, and I told them that modular, the system, it is a amazing piece of gear, and I think that is going to be highly valuable in the future. First of all, because I don't think they're doing any more like wooden modules anymore.
Oh, really?
With the panels. I don't know if they're actually producing the Roomba rack anymore. Like if there's anyone, guys, like sure that I'm wrong, like you can say it. And Bastel, they actually, I don't know what they're doing right now.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out. But personally, I do admire them a lot. They're really, really genuinely nice people. And they were doing this just for passion. I have to say also that their system and most of the modules, they're very low frequency and there's a lot of noise.
Okay.
It's like a lot. But at the same time, I think that you get to, it is like, for example, when I used to see Leos playing and some of the artists, like they had playing, that they were using in such a creative way that it would inspire me to actually, like the kick, for example, is very nasty, but at the same time, it is like very rude and noisy.
Yeah, it's good.
That's why you're wanting a kick drum. But I think they're good. Like some people have their own opinions, but at the same time, you have to think that they were like mostly DIY. They were kind of cheap also to build. And I think if you add that they are very unique, I don't think I will never like get rid of any of their modules for the like emotional side that I'm close to them, and at the same time because they're very unique. I have to say, for example, that the sequencer, it did break my head. Like I
saw that was the least attractive bit of it, but the rest great.
Yeah, I never got so much into it.
Which one's the kick drum? The Tea Party?
Yeah.
T-Kick? It's called T-Kick. Yeah, that's great.
So that one is amazing. I really like that one.
It's probably an 808 resonator.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And they also have the filter, which was really cool. I had my first module was a Chomso. And it was a module that I built in a club at Super Booth, like with lights on top of like this, on top of the module because it was all dark. And like when I went back home and yeah, I think they're very unique, but there were some like things that I tried to approach that it didn't end up working very well, for example. Like, we're humans and that happens. But yeah, if you ever want to play it, there's one here.
All right. So, I'll take your word. Yeah. You can borrow one of my toys too. I have offer.
Yes, we have guys. We have a deal. Like now it's public, so we have to do it. Like I lend you my rhythm, and you lend me your 707.
Excellent. Yes. All right, let's move on.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, that was a good review.
Okay. Let's talk about tacos and pizza. So yeah, like let's go to the question: tacos de bistec or al pastor?
Pastor, hands down. Fuck bistec.
Oh, it's because of the pineapple.
I don't know, but pineapples on pastor, but I always get them without pineapple. I don't think I've had a bistec taco in years, because even when I go back to Mexico, it's not something I go in. It's something I get at the taco place.
I mean, I guess if you go back to Mexico, you will have like chilorio or some other.
I would just have pastor and seafood all day, I think. All right. That's settled.
That said, what hobbies do you have? What do you do on your spare time? And what kind of
you shouldn't ask someone that works in music that question, because
I don't
I mean, I come home from work and I don't know, I listen to music or play my records or start playing with music. I play guitar. Sorry?
What kind of music are you listening nowadays?
Oh, right now. Actually, I have some props for that.
All right.
Not Weird Al, that was an inside joke. So I knew you would ask me this, so I brought these records. I think this is the record I've listened to the most this week. It's Naughty Boys by Yellow Magic Orchestra. You see? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they're super famous, right? They're quite well known, but I don't think this is their most famous album. And somehow it's the one that I've been really drawn to this week. It's so good, so tropical and so progressive at the same time. I don't know, it's a classic, I think. I was playing it to a friend the other day and he thought it was Twin Shadow singing in Japanese. But this is really old. This is like an 80s record. And the other one I have here, which is also a highlight of this past few weeks, is this Tatsuro Yamashita. I mean, I don't recommend this album per se because it's just a compilation, but it's the only one I have. So he's great. I've been listening to a lot of stuff like this lately, but also a lot of cumbia, some reggaeton even. I really like Bad Bunny. I mean, as you know, I think I recommended it to you a lot, but Bad Bunny's new album is amazing. And it's just a shame that we're all locked up because we could be dancing those songs at the club right now. I mean, my biggest fear, and I know people share this fear with me, is that by the time we're out of this, it won't be cool anymore. So.
Oh, wow. I believe that J Balvin is gonna be always there.
Well, I had tickets to see Bad Bunny next month in Barcelona.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, the flights were canceled, festivals canceled, so maybe next year. But yeah, someone said city pop. Yeah, that's Japanese city pop, Tatsuro Yamashita. But I also listen to a lot of metal at home.
All right.
Yeah. When I'm working,
never stops being a metalhead.
Yeah, you never go back. I've been listening to a lot of that, and of course, a lot of electronic music. There was the CTM festival here in Berlin a couple months ago, maybe 3 months, and I saw Sarah Kin, and that blew my mind. I think she's one of the most interesting DJs these days. So I've been listening to a lot of her sets. She just uploaded a new one last night. It's like, I don't know, some really obscure techno core. Boris is texting Opeth. Yeah, Boris and I have been listening to Opeth together at work. Great. But classic Opeth, we have to specify. There's a question about Bad Bunny. No, we mean the first one, Yo hago lo que me da la gana, not the one he dropped like 2 days ago. That one was okay, but the previous one was incredible.
I'm still amazed how you can talk about metal and then send me like Bad Bunny music on WhatsApp. So.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, a lot of people.
But
I hear that a lot, but I don't think it should be the case. I mean, I think
it should totally be the case, though. Like, you should be open to everything at the end. Like, I also like I ask you about your music, and I see that you still like very analog. Like, you still have your records, and then you go back from like finish working, and then you just play your record.
I have Spotify as well, you know.
I guess so.
Yeah, Boris comments DJ Kohlrabi. Yeah, shout out to DJ Kohlrabi. We also saw her at CTM. Oh my god, it was crazy. It was the weirdest DJ set we've seen, but the music was amazing. Mix of classical with city pop, some experimental spoken word. It was all very strange. Don't even know how to describe it. But just going back to what you said, I mean, it's just that I think every genre has great music. So there's no reason why a genre should define you. I mean, there's only a couple of genres that I really try to stay away from, but
which are?
One of them is this Cuban one. You maybe know it, Trova. Oh my god, yeah. And also, I steer away from most a cappella things.
Really?
Yeah.
So no karaoke for you, though, I guess.
But that's not a cappella. It's fine.
Okay.
I mean, no karaoke for a cappella songs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Then my next question will be like, in the future, although you like have been working right now like for almost 2 years in the industry, do you see yourself working in the industry in the future, like staying in the same industry? You would like to do something else? Is something else that you like are interested in at some point in your life you would like to change your field?
That's a good question. No, I do see myself in the industry in some or another capacity, one or another. Yeah, because I really like it. I think the community that we have is great. I mean, you're part of it, so you know how it is. I've met, I don't know, the last 2 years since I've been with Native, and even a bit before during my research, I've met just incredible people. During my research days, of course, traveling for conferences, I met people from other companies that I actually admire, like people from Eventide, Isotope, Ableton, just name dropping all the companies that I admire and the people that work for them. I mean, I was able to meet them because of my work and my research. So, I mean, that's something that I don't want to lose. It's probably my favorite part of the job right now, to be honest.
I agree with you.
People is great. And we have events like Super Booth.
Yep. With Mezcal.
Exactly. I mean, last year we had Ian was there. Remember Ian, who I think he's watching. So shout out to Ian. Ian came around. We brought some mezcal, and then we went to the Verbos after party. So that was a very round Super Booth, very good event. Yes. So for me, that does it. The community, I'm quite amazed by. Incredible people. I'm also looking forward to the next interviews that you're going to have. I mean, really, and also the one you have with Trovarsi. I mean, it's just really people that I really admire and look up to. So it's incredible to be among them right now.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I also like cooking, but I don't think the world is ready for my cooking. So I don't think I'm going
I 100% believe the world is ready for your cooking. I have tried your tacos, and they were awesome. So guys, you know, like if you ever leave the industry, you can always cook and make a living out of it. There is another question.
Yeah.
That I think is related to what you do on your spare time, which, like, we are a bit of gamer people too.
Sure, I would kind of say so. I think gamers would disagree, but
yeah, okay, let's put it like I cannot consider myself a gamer.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there is a question like I was talking about Donkey Kong.
Yeah, okay, let's do it. We got Ian representing. Yeah, hi Ian. Yeah, I grew up playing Nintendo. I mean, I don't know, from age 5 maybe to the day I bought my first guitar, or actually it was a bass guitar. I think video games were my life, specifically Nintendo games. So at that point, I thought I was going to work at Nintendo.
Oh, that would be
that was my dream back then. So yeah, I played a lot of Nintendo. I left. I stopped playing for a few years while I played guitar, but then I came back. I have a Nintendo Switch right here, which I love. I try to stay away from it because once I download a new game, I just play it like nonstop for like 2 weeks. But yeah, I mean, growing up, I think Donkey Kong series were quite amazing. Like the amount of hours I spent playing those games. Donkey Kong 1, 2, and 3. I think 3 was the hardest one for me. I never finished that one. I never got to the helicopter. Probably you can get a helicopter at some point. I never got that. I've only seen pictures and reviews of that. And then Zelda came out. I played a lot of Zelda as a kid.
What was your first console, though?
First console that I owned was a Super Nintendo. But my neighbor had an NES, and I would play with that one a lot. So I had an NES at home, but it was in mine.
All right. Do you still keep one?
Sorry?
Do you keep them?
Yeah, my mom has everything.
Nice.
Home, yeah.
Nice.
My Nintendo 64 doesn't work anymore. It has this bug that apparently comes with age, but
that's so cool.
Maybe you can fix it.
That's what I've been doing lately.
We have a great question incoming. What's my favorite Donkey Kong track? Aquatic Ambience. You know that one, Fabian?
No, I don't know.
Okay, but we're gonna share the link. It's the ambient track from the water world. I also used to like the Donkey Kong rap from Donkey Kong 64, but I'm not gonna sing it right now.
Okay, I'm going to.
Oh yeah, here Godo Man is saying that the soundtrack for Donkey Kong 2 is great. Yeah, I have to say yes. The soundtrack as a whole, Donkey Kong Country 2 has a better soundtrack, but as a track, Aquatic Ambience.
Is there any like sound designer from like gaming specifically that you like?
Sound designer, I don't really know any by name. I mean, I sure admire the guy that wrote Aquatic Ambience. Yeah, it's the best. But of course, I think his name, I have it wrote, but is it the guy that the composer for all the Nintendo games, famed Nintendo composer? What's his name? Only one. Koji Kondo. Yeah, Koji Kondo. He wrote the music for Zelda and all that. Yeah, I mean, that's admirable. It's amazing. Also, yeah, Breath of the Wild. All Zelda games have been amazing. It's just so inspiring.
There is something really nice about like music in games. I do actually listen a lot to that when I'm working. It does inspire me a lot. Mostly like Commodore and Amiga. I've been listening a lot to Amiga.
I mean, someone told me that music was kind of written for you to concentrate, or what's written with that in mind, that you had to be like focused and playing. So it's not bad music to work to or study to. Mega Man X soundtrack is amazing as well. I mean, I've used that to work. It just brings me memories of being stressed playing that game, but I recently learned that game is classified as one of the hardest Super NES games. So yeah, I remember.
There is a guy, I forgot his name. He made he actually recently made a synthesizer based on the chip from the ENS, and dude, it sounds the same. Like when you actually listen, like the synthesizer, it sounds the same. I think it was the same guy from the Acid 8. I think.
Right. I don't know. I have to check. We'll share that information later. Oh, cool. Someone's saying Shovel Knight's great. Shovel Knight is a great game. That's right.
Yes.
It's with good soundtrack. Oh, Castlevania music, also amazing. Okay, we should stop here because this is a different interview now.
Well, the last questions. What is your favorite food? I would say that is tacos.
Yeah, it is tacos. Yeah,
can't deny that. What is your favorite German food?
My favorite German food, I like Bratkartoffeln. Like it's just a very basic dish, just roasted tomatoes. Yes. I also like German kebabs, but I mean, are they German? I don't know, but I like them.
They're kind of Turkish, but they
are they that Turkish? I don't know. I mean,
I would say I have to tell you though, like they taste better here. Not that I don't like them, like the food in Turkey, but they have done it a very different way here in at least in Berlin than in Turkey. So yeah.
We're in the dark now. Yeah. It's better.
The tacos of your mom, good vibes.
Oh, that's true, Hannah. Hi. Yeah, those were good taco parties we had at home.
And the last question: Your favorite sweet?
I don't think I have one.
You're not a sweet tooth.
I can eat sweets, but okay. Oh, wait, there is one. I'm lying. There is this brand of Australian biscuits or cookies called Tim Tams. That's my favorite thing ever. Yeah, it's just chocolate cookies, like biscuits, like this, like long, like double coating. Like, well, they have like a chocolate waffle, and they're coated with chocolate. It's amazing. I don't get to eat them very often. They're really hard to get outside Australia. Someone told me there's a shop here in Berlin, but it's on the other side of town, so it might as well be Australia. So, but yeah, that's it.
Well, guys, if you have any other question, this is the time. We are almost about to leave.
Yeah, we should wrap up.
Yes.
I hope this was of use, or everyone got anything out of this, because I mean, I think we just had a chat amongst friends, right? That's
the whole idea, though.
As we do, yeah.
I do hope that you all guys enjoyed it and that it was inspiring, because that's what I wanted to do. Like, have people that are actually working really hard, behind the scenes, and just get to know them, like be able to ask them everything, like all the things that you want to know or learn about them, and just have a good time, and not only talking about like synthesizers, but also like how do you get into this, what inspired you. And because I'm pretty sure that there is also a lot of people who wonders how to get into this industry, on what to do or what to follow, what to study. And I personally found it very, very inspiring. So I hope all of you did that too. Next week we have Tats. That's like, it's really nice because you're into like also like digital. He's like full analog.
Well, I'm glad I didn't have to go after him.
So you're all like welcome to join again, and the same, like ask him anything you want to know about his life, his career, like just feel inspired and have a chat between friends and have fun. And you, Fabian, dude, thank you so much.
Thank you for organizing this. I think it's, as you said, it's a great initiative. Thanks for just giving us a space to talk about this. As you said, like the focus wasn't really to talk about the work of Native Instruments, because you can find that out somewhere else.
Yeah.
But maybe the work that led me to work at Native Instruments, and of course we talked slightly a bit of what I do there on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I guess the focus right now was on how I ended up arriving at Native Instruments. And if someone would like to pursue a career in the same field, well, I mean, I can't tell you to just do the same stuff I did, but I can tell you what I did. And
we all have different backgrounds, I guess, but we all share the same passion for music, for synthesizers, for electronics, for engineering, for games, food, drinks. So at the end, I think we all I wanted to actually have the opportunity to share that knowledge and experience. And Mike is asking Tats. Yeah, I didn't explain it. He was the chief engineer of Korg. He designed Volca, Minilog, Monolog, Monotrons, Monotribe.
We're huge fans of Tats here.
Yeah. And he's also a really nice guy. He's a really nice dude, super sweet. We're gonna talk about open source, his life, his designs, how, like the same questions, like how did he get into this. So I hope you all guys enjoy it too.
I'll be in the audience. I will be in the audience asking questions.
I know you will.
All right. So,
and thank you for that too. And after that, we will have Cenk from Elektron, but I will be asking him questions related to the same, his career as an artist and his life. So that's
Dataline.
Dataline.
Mr. Dataline. Tell him to follow me on Instagram. That'll be great. Can we end on that note? Can we end on that?
I think he followed you after I said that. Like, he instantly just went to the phone. Like,
it's just a running gag at this point. But if you allow me, Flavia, I would just like to thank all my friends and family that joined us for this. I can see some of them commented. Hi, Marcela. Saludos a la familia. And probably, I hope my mom got to watch this. Hola, mama. But yeah, thank you very much for organizing this. It was great fun, and I'm dying to see you again. Hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon for a beer, face to face. Yeah, and talk about cumbia.
And that's cumbia finally. Well,
guys, thank you so much for joining. I see you next week, same time, 7 p.m. here. And Fabi's.
Thank you, Flavis.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Ciao. See you, everyone.
Ciao.